Good morning, this is Exploring with Em and Stu.
And today we are here in Chatham in Kent, aren't we?
Yeah.
Where we've decided to take a little look at the quite incredible Great Lines, or as we know them as Chatham Lines.
Chatham Lines.
Which was in the short, it was a massive 3 kilometres of fortifications that ran all the way from Gillingham right down to Fort Amherst. And like I said, 3 kilometres long.
Yeah.
They were built in like 1755, so they're really quite old, Napoleonic. So
Yeah.
we haven't got lots of information, but we thought we'd give you a little look anyway.
Yeah, so we're going to go and have a little look. This is going to be very casual. This isn't going to be our normal stuff because we're just having a look around. So let's go and have a look, shall we?
Now, if you're wondering why there's so many fortifications around this area, it was to protect the Royal Naval Docklands here at Chatham. And it was actually to protect it from landward attack because there was already quite a few forts around the outskirts. So the lines are actually known as a bastion trace fortification, which is basically a long line of defences with these bastions all the way along, which defended this long line of ditches, pointing all sorts of guns and things into those ditches, protecting any enemies that basically would have been able to get in and invade. So when these ditches were first originally constructed, they would have just basically been just a dry ditch. But in 1806, as you can see, they lined them with bricks, basically to strengthen it and to give it a greater protection. So we're actually starting our walk along the lines here on the lower lines, which were actually built in 1806 as an extension to those 1700s lines that were originally built. And we're basically going to take you for a little look and point out a few features and basically see what we can see, because we don't actually know ourselves. Right, so walk along the lines, we've found our first feature, which basically appears to be a stairwell down into the ground. Very curious.
Very curious.
Very curious. Like we said, we don't actually know what we're going to find whilst we walk along here. We've got a little bit of an idea, but we certainly don't, well, we've never been before, have we?
No.
So yeah, like we said, just a stairway down into the ground.
It just looks like it's obviously capped off, but obviously went into, yes, it does look like it's capped off.
Because they've obviously put this here for some reason or another.
Yeah.
If anybody knows, I'll be interested. Maybe one day we'll have to come back.
We would be very interested to know.
Look.
That's right. But we are going to move on now, so let's go.
Now, jumping forward quite a few decades, and in 1937 they decided to use the space underneath this fort for what is known as HMS Wildfire, which is really quite a curious long story, but basically there is massive underground naval control operation centres built underneath here, completely abandoned now, but I believe they were actually used up until about the 1980s. But I'm not going to give you too much information, there's loads about it on Google, but we believe this is actually one of the entrances.
Whoa, it's been a bit windy.
It's a little bit, yeah.
As we're standing literally outside, what is this called, Emma?
This is the HMS Wildfire entrances, one of quite a few which have been heavily blocked up.
Yeah,
now.
this has got, right, so the way to get in these is you've got to chop all this breeze block out, then you've got to get past a steel welded door.
Yeah, on
then
the outside.
Then a brick up and then another steel welded door.
So one of the locals has told us anyway.
So if you're going to come down here, I wouldn't worry about it. Just come and have a look at the fronts. Anyway, so Emma, what were these used for? What were they?
What
What
were
were they
these
for?
Well, I believe because obviously we're right near Chatham Docklands, and these were basically massive underground sort of control centre for the Navy, protected obviously because Chatham would have been heavily bombed. 1937 they built this, which I think is just before actually the outbreak of the actual Second World War.
Oh, so this was actually done around about 1937?
Yeah, 1937.
Oh, so because obviously the world broke out in 1939, so it's good preparing.
Yeah, they decided they needed maybe some secure underground sort of bunkers for their Navy to be protected. They built 4 all around the country. Now, the only remaining one, I believe, is sort of North London. I think that's still being used. But this one here was used right up to the 1980s for training purposes, a few Navy operations and things like that. From what I can gather, looking at some photographs, maybe we'll pop some in, it's surprisingly well sort of protected.
Preserved.
Yeah, the preservation is reasonably decent. There's been 1 or 2 fires, which is why they're heavily secured now, but
there you go.
There you go.
All right, then we're going to carry on. We'll see what else we can find because this is actually quite interesting.
Yeah. Right, so what we've actually got here, just further along the ditch, is actually quite an interesting feature because it is a prototype searchlight emplacement. And this was built by the Royal Engineers, who were doing all sorts of prototypes and things back in around about the 1890s. And here we are. So I suppose it's a bit of a practice to see if the mechanisms worked. Very unique, really quite important, and really fascinating because, of course, we've never seen anything like this before. So, although this particular searchlight emplacement was never actually used in the end, it had a curious design in that the fact that the searchlight stuck up and actually pointed backwards towards a big mirror that shone down into the dry ditch, because I suppose that's where they wanted the light, in the actual ditch. But like I said, they didn't actually use it in the end. I suppose maybe it wasn't a very good prototype, but really interesting. And like I said, we've never seen anything like this before, but it's interesting to see the different types of prototypes that they were actually testing, these Royal Engineers, back in the late Victorian times. Right, I think it's about time we saw a bit of stew.
Oh, yes.
Leaving me all to it.
I'm leaving her to it. But Emma, this is actually a really interesting feature of this walk that we're doing today.
Well, when we first looked at it, I was like, oh, gun emplacement. And then, thankfully, there's actually an information board here, as there is along quite a lot of the lines so far, which is helpful because, like I said, we've not done an awful lot of research to come here. We just want to have a look. I
just wish that we could literally show you this bit here where the emplacement was for the searchlight.
Yeah.
I wish we can get a bit closer.
I wonder whether if we just slightly go down around the side, we might be able to look down into it a little bit. I don't know,
let's have a look, shall we? We'll go around. So obviously this bit isn't looked after at the moment because it's like just coming into summer. Yeah. So they obviously haven't trimmed anything down just yet. But you can see right, okay.
There you go.
So you can see a gully
right.
running along here.
So the metal round bit is where the actual light would have been.
Yeah.
And I suppose, sticking out the back here would have been this
would have been the massive light. So literally the light would have sat like a gun emplacement, basically, and then a big, like, long bit of metal would go out and all the way up here somewhere and shine the light down. But obviously they thought, what's the point of putting a mirror on it when we could just put a searchlight on the area?
I don't know. I suppose if they wanted to shine it over, it would have had to have been such a tall light.
It would have been really big, and it would have been noticed.
Probably. Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I don't know. But this is a really good little feature. Yeah, exactly. But we're going to go on now because there's a lot more to see.
Well, just in front of us down there, the lines just continue on. So
I think we should have a look. Let's go. We're just walking up this this part of the pathway that we just left you at the other feature. But Emma has just literally literally shouted at me and said, "There's another feature," and here she is.
Yeah,
and this feature is here.
Yeah, and thanks again to the handy information board, although we kind of can already tell what this is. Of course, it's a gun emplacement, but apparently there was 2 gun emplacements here, which makes sense as to why there were searchlights here.
Yeah.
But this was basically put here during the rearmament for the Second World War.
Quick firing gun?
Yeah, probably ex-Royal Navy guns,
probably.
obviously, would have been put here. 12-pounders, I think, according to the information board.
And these information boards are scattered throughout the area, isn't
To
it?
be, yeah. I mean, really quite good conditions, thankfully. But this gun emplacement here is one of the better preserved ones. I don't know where the other one would be. Maybe it's further over there. So further along the ditch here, of course, there was going to be all sorts of gun emplacements, not just Second World War, but obviously originally the old 19th century gun emplacements. And just here, we've actually got one of those, which basically was the site of a 32-pounder muzzle-loading gun, which would have been on a garrison carriage. Apparently, they would have fired grape shot, which I hear was quite a devastating ammunition that they used back in those days. But yeah, it would have basically sat down there. It would have been like a cannon type of gun. And I suppose if we was to look along the lines here, there was probably a few of them. But nice little feature. We thought we'd show you as we're walking along.
So here we are again at another little feature.
Yes.
This is actually a really cool little feature, isn't it? We've just read the board. Yes, we are cheating. We've read the board because we were debating what concrete this is. I was actually wrong this time. This is a Second World War concrete, so Second World War gun emplacement.
Certainly is. Oh, I've got to tell you about it, have I?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how well you can see, but this ring of bolts on the ground here would have once held in place a 12-pounder quick-fire gun. Very likely, yet again, one of the old sort of reused guns from the Navy boats, because of course new guns were in short supply originally during the outbreak of the Second World War, so they often just dug around to see what they could find from the previous wars until something new came along. But here we go. I believe also in conjunction with this gun emplacement there's another little feature just over there. So.
But we do find one thing before we leave. Never see the bolts sheared off. It's actually quite unusual for us to find the bolts sheared off.
Yeah, they've done some of this round where I live up in Norfolk because they were supposedly trip hazards. I don't know.
Nothing like seeing the old bolts though with the proper nuts on top.
Yeah.
That was really good, wasn't it? But we are going to be travelling that way and we're going to be seeing another little feature.
Supposedly. Let's go. So the lines here were clearly used quite extensively for prototypes of different types of things. And just down here, we've actually got yet another prototype searchlight. They were used in apparently these lines from as early as about the 1850s, testing out all different sorts of things. This one, as you can see, we wish we'd found first because it's actually better than the other one that we saw over there. Again, this searchlight would have been on a pivot with the light at one side. It's connected by a sort of a big beam, and it would have been able to basically pivot when they needed to use it. But it's quite extensive. It's got just at the back there, as you can see, that sort of protection for the people that would have been using it, just in case, of course, you know, they were being bombed at the time. But supposedly there is actually only 3 of these type of searchlight prototypes in the whole world. So to know that we've actually got one of them here is really actually quite fascinating. I'm quite excited to see it. Now, just walking along what looks like some sort of original little trackway. These bricks look quite old anyway. We're actually going to cross over the moat where we started. We've come full circle here, and we're going to take you for a little look at the Lower Lines Park because supposedly there's actually a few interesting features in there. So if we can find them, then we'll point them out to you. Now, just in this space behind me was in fact a large house called Admiralty House, and it was the official home of the Royal Navy Commander-in-Chief who controlled a lot of the site here. It would have been a grand house built in around about 1907. It would have had tennis courts, beautiful gardens and all sorts of things. Unfortunately, as you can see, there is now nothing here with it all been demolished in the 1960s. But if we just take a little look on the outskirts of this area, there is one or two little features which are related to the house that used to be here. So let's have a look and see if we can find these little features. So just to the south of the house there, where the commander chap used to live, he actually had built an air raid shelter. And in fact, actually he had 2 built, but unfortunately we can't see the other one. And here we are at what remains of this air raid shelter, built of course in 1940. this would have been the entrance, and I do believe that this would have taken you down into a stairway, down a ladder basically, into a chamber, possibly connected to another one. But I thought it was interesting to show you, and just behind us in this very overgrown area here, we can sort of make out the concrete roof of another one, so we're going to assume that's the other one. But we just thought it might be interesting just to show you a little feature that actually hasn't been demolished from that guy's house. There's one last thing to mention just down here, so we're going to talk about that before we finish. And just leaving those air raid shelters behind us, we come to a large green area. Not much here today, but this was known as the Medway Road Camp, and it was basically a World War II encampment which would have had all sorts of wooden huts here, and it would have housed the men and women that worked just in the underground naval facility that we talked about at the beginning of the video. So that's quite a fascinating little thing just to mention before we go, but we've got one more thing we want to show you. So we've just come to the gate on the Medway Road, and this leads up to that encampment we were talking about. But just behind we've got what we believe probably was a gatehouse. It's been painted in recent years, but underneath is a nice sort of red brick, probably World War II. But that's quite a nice little feature we thought we'd point out. We might be wrong, but we certainly believe that's what it is.
Whew.
Right, so here we are. At the site of that encampment a little again. We had a little look around the area, didn't we? We managed to find.
We just had a little rummage for some dragon's teeth just a second ago. Emma was just going to explain that to you.
Yeah, just down near that on the Medway Road, there was a huge amount of large dragon teeth that I wanted to have a little look for because I knew they were there, and we managed to find some, didn't we? They're really overgrown, unfortunately, but we
were going to talk about it, but we just done an experiment ending with the guardhouse, and there's a lot of road noise, so we couldn't really get into the nitty-gritties of it, but I've put some cinematics in.
But I believe they're listed and stuff, that's why they're still there. But anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
we hope you enjoed this video. It's been a really good day.
That has, yeah. A look at the lower lines here at Chatham. We weren't expecting to come, were we? So no. We've not done an awful lot of information, but we tried to tell you a little bit.
As much as we can.
It's been an awful lot better than we thought it was
going to be. It's been a really good day.
So much more here to see than we thought.
Yeah.
This is all a country park, so
come down and visit.
Come along and have a look.
There's plaques everywhere, it tells you the information. That's where we got a lot of our information from, I won't lie. But we had researched the place just before we came.
Yeah, so definitely come along.
Yeah.
So.
But if you like the video, please like and subscribe. It always helps our channel grow and grow and grow. And lately it has, and it's all down to you, so thank you.
Yeah, definitely. And if you want to see a little bit more from us, we do have a Patreon, so we'll give that a little bit of a shameless plug.
I think that's only about £3 a month, and that is literally a flat rate.
Yeah, so take a little look, description below.
There you go. So as from Exploring with Em and Stu, we, like I said, hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you again on our next adventure.
Right, so here from Chatham on the Great Lines. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.